to make a painter's apron using the Joy of Painting fabrics from Studio E. So what we're going to do is going to make the body of the apron with the paint dabs. This is a border off the panel that we're going to put at the bottom of the apron. And we're going to make the straps out of the cute little squirrels and then a large divided pocket in the front using the paint tubes. So let's get started. So the first step to our apron is we're going to sew the brush trim at the bottom to create the whole body of the apron. Then we're going to cut the armholes and we'll sew down the edges to finish the body of the apron. So first let's sew this guy on. Okay, so now I've sewn the border to the brushes, or to the paint dabs, and here's a tip for this. Sew the strip on top and use the line that's printed on the fabric as your sewing line so that you don't get some weird cream sticking through. So that's one way to sew that on. So now we have our apron body. We're going to fold it in half lengthwise. And the stripe we know is at the bottom of the apron, so this makes this the top of the apron up here. And we need to mark where our armholes, or our arc for the opening for your arms is. And so for that, we're going to use a square ruler, and we need to measure down 9.5 inches and in 11.5 inches. So I put this on the 11.5 to get that measurement, and I mark it. And then I'm going to do the 9.5, which is here, so I can mark it here. Now that I have these two marks, I'm going to draw a curve from this point to this point. Just a nice gentle arc. And you want to use a wash out or an iron out pen in case you don't like your first drawing. And you just here's the trick. When you're drawing this arc, look at that. When you get to this point, start looking at your second dash. So you get here, you look for that second dash as you draw, and your hand will naturally go to the dash. That's a little drafting trick I learned in college. Make sure you have a pen that writes. There we go. So that is my arc. Then you take some fabric scissors or your rotary cutter and you cut through both layers to get that line. This is easier with scissors if you don't have a lot of experience with your rotary cutter. There we go. Now we have the top of our apron. And we're going to hold it up. We're going to take it to the iron and we're going to fold up the edges 1/4 inch. And this is now unbiased, so it'll fold up nicely for you. And then you're going to do it another 1/4 inch to give yourself a finished edge. You're going to do the two arcs first, then all of the straight edges. So we're going to iron it, top stitch it, and then come back and be ready to assemble the apron. Okay, so I've actually taken this arc down 1 more inch. So if you were to measure it, the pattern will tell you 11.5 and 10.5 instead of 9.5. It just gives it a prettier arch. Now I've gone over, I've ironed this 1/4 inch over, 1/4 inch over. I just eyeball it. I don't measure it. You've got plenty. If it's a little bigger, you don't want to go narrower. It's going to be harder to sew. So now I've got it all pressed. I'm going to top stitch both of these arcs. Okay, so I folded over all the edges and top stitched them down. I did the 2 curved pieces first, then the top. Then I went down each side. And finally I did the end, the bottom, just to give this a completely finished edge. So that's the body of our apron. And now we need to make the ties and the neck strap that goes around, that ends up here. So let's set this aside for a second. So we're going to take 3-inch strips. They're different lengths, some for the neck. The neck one is shorter and then longer ones for the ties. And you're going to fold it in half. And then you're going to fold it in each edge. So I've gone ahead and done that and ironed it. So this is what it looks like. First I folded it in half. Then I fold each edge to the halfway line. And then I fold it again, so it is now a finished edge. I also fold in each short end a 1/4 inch to give me a finished end on the short end. So now that I have these all folded and ironed, I will take it over to the sewing machine and I'm going to top stitch on all 4 edges to give it a finished look. These edges are going to be on the back of your apron, so you do want them finished so they don't fray over time. So let's go and top stitch these to do our ties and our neck wrap. Okay, so we've sewn our pocket. We've left an opening for turning. We want to clip the corners off, going not to the stitching, but just a little above it. This will get rid of the bulk in the corners. And then we're ready to turn this right side out through the opening. Okay, so now I like to use a purple thing, the square end, to poke out my corners to make sure they're nice and square. Okay, then I'm going to go over, I'm going to iron this flat. And then where the opening is, I'm going to press a 1/4 inch of the fabric to the wrong side to create a finished edge for our pocket. Okay, so here's our pocket all pressed, and you can see here where I folded it into the inside to give me a finished edge. And you want to put this on the bottom when we put it on our apron. So we're going to fold the pocket in half. We're going to fold the apron in half lengthwise again. And I'm going to finger press it so I have my center line. Okay. So then I'm going to position my pocket on my apron, aligning the center of the pocket with the creased line on the apron. And for now, I'm just going to pin it in place. Okay, so before we sew this down, we want to make sure it's on the apron where we want it for our hands, so that we need to go back up here and do our neckband. So I love using the Wonderclips for this. Take your apron. Those are the ties. Here's the neckband. So you're going to position the neckband at the top behind it, and I clip it with a Wonderclip. Make sure it doesn't twist. Make sure this isn't twisting. And put it on the other side with a clip. Now you can put this around your neck. And make sure the pocket is low enough on the apron. which it is for me on this one. And I am 7 3/4 from the bottom edge. So 7, 7.5. In there, you'll have your pocket in the right spot for you. Some people differ. You can also at this point measure the neck strap and make sure that you like where the apron falls on you. And you can adjust this to make it smaller if you need to. One way to do that would be to overlap it like this and top stitch that fold in place. The other would be to clip one end, refinish the end, and put it back on the apron. So now that we have our pocket where we want it, I'm going to top stitch it onto the apron, down each side and across the bottom. And when I do that, I will capture this opening and get it closed so it's all sewn up. So let's do that next. Okay, so the pocket is sewn on and my opening is caught with my top stitch. Now I'm going to divide the pocket into 3 so that you don't just have one big pocket. You can choose to do one big pocket, you can choose to do a big and a little, 2 narrows and a fat one. You get to decide how you want to break up your pocket, but you're going to use a pencil or a washout pencil or Frixion pen that'll go away when you iron it. Use a ruler, and the pocket is 17 inches. So I'm going to make the center pocket 7 inches and the 2 outer pockets 5 inches. They're nice round numbers and it works. So I take a ruler and from the edge I measure in 5 inches and draw a line. And repeat on the other side. Okay, I'm going to take it over to the machine and I'm going to top stitch right on the drawn line through all 3 layers, and that will divide our pocket up. Okay, so here's our pockets all divided up. So you can put something in each. So now we need to sew our neck strap on and our 2 ties. So this one we've already clipped from earlier. So what I do is I flip it over to the back. And I'm going to sew a box here, like this, and that will tack this in place. I'll repeat there, and that will attach my neck strap. Then on the sides, these go on like this, so you bring them in about 1 inch. And you clip it in place, and I'll do the same thing. I'll sew a box there just to tack it in place. And the same for this one. And then our apron will be ready to wear. And there we go. These are all sewn on. Give you a close-up what it looks like. We have our Joy of Painting apron done. It's got its ties and its pocket and its lovely end. So have fun creating it.